On Tuesday, the 12th of September, 1843, Sarah Drake prepared breakfast. By 8:15, 18-month-old Alfred Gillett convulsed. The Bow Street officer noted white powder. This document follows the arsenic from purchase to Gallows. On Tuesday, the 12th of September, 1843, the sky over Lambeth was a flat, unbroken grey. At 7:30 in the morning, in the first-floor kitchen of number 3, Princes Street, the air held the smells of burning coal and stale grease. The room measured 12 feet by 10, with walls of painted brick and a single sash window overlooking the yard. Present were Sarah Drake, aged 22, her employer Mary Ann Gillett, aged 31, and Mrs. Gillett's infant son, Alfred, aged 18 months. Sarah Drake placed a bowl of porridge before the child. The boy ate. Within minutes, his body stiffened. He vomited a yellowish fluid onto the stone floor. By 7:50, violent spasms contracted his limbs. His skin turned a mottled blue. Mary Ann Gillett witnessed the seizure from the doorway, her position noted later as 3 paces from the table. Dr. John Gibson of Kennington Road pronounced the child dead at 8:15. Mr. Gillett had been summoned, running the quarter-mile to the doctor's residence. The journey took 4 minutes. Dr. Gibson arrived at 8:25. His initial observations recorded 4 sensory details: the child's fixed, dilated pupils, the acrid smell of vomit, the cold, waxy feel of the skin, the complete silence of the room after the spasms ceased. He first examined the mouth for obstruction. The primary location was the kitchen at number 3, Princes Street, Lambeth. The room was 12 by 10 feet. The floor was bare stone, the walls painted brick. Furnishings included a deal table, 2 wooden chairs, and a cast-iron range. Morning light came from one soot-streaked window. The room smelled of coal smoke and sour milk. Sounds were the ticking of a clock and the distant cry of a costermonger. Alfred Gillett was found on the floor beside his chair. He wore a white cotton frock, now stained yellow at the collar. His body was cold. A pool of vomit, roughly 8 inches in diameter, lay by his head. Mary Ann Gillett sent her husband John Gillett for help. He returned with Dr. John Gibson at 8:25. Dr. Gibson observed the vomit, the child's contorted posture, and the untouched bowl of porridge. He examined the body, questioned Sarah Drake, and ordered its removal to the back parlour. The small body was carried by Mr. Gillett at 8:40. The afternoon brought a slow, steady rain that darkened the yellow brick of the terrace. Police Constable William Hayes of Bow Street was informed at 9 o'clock. He ordered the room sealed and the contents of the child's stomach preserved for examination. The post-mortem examination was scheduled for 2 o'clock that afternoon in the back parlour of number 3, Princes Street. The room was 10 feet square, papered in a faded floral pattern. Dr. John Gibson performed it. Present were Police Constable William Hayes and the child's father, John Gillett. The room was lit by 2 tallow candles. The smell of damp wool and carbolic soap was noted. The temperature was cool. Instruments used included a scalpel, a pair of scissors, forceps, and a glass jar. Dr. Gibson made an incision from sternum to navel. He noted inflammation of the stomach lining, empty intestines, healthy lungs, and a normal heart. The stomach contents, approximately 4 ounces of semi-digested porridge, were preserved. They were poured into a clear glass jar, sealed with a cork stopper, and labelled by Constable Hayes in black ink, "Stomach of A. Gillett, 12 Sept. 1843. The examination concluded at 3:20. Evidence collection began at 3:25. Item 1. The child's porridge bowl, found on the kitchen table, collected by Constable Hayes. It was a white china bowl, 6 inches in diameter, with a blue rim. He handled it with a cloth, placed it in a canvas bag, and sealed the bag with red wax. He recorded it in the property register as Exhibit A. It was taken to Bow Street. Item 2, a paper packet, found in the pocket of Sarah Drake's apron by Mary Ann Gillett at 9:10. It was a square of white paper, folded into a quarter, containing a fine white powder. Mrs. Gillett pointed without touching. Constable Hayes used a sheet of paper to lift it, placing it in a small wooden box. He marked the box B. It was logged and taken to Bow Street. Item 3. A teaspoon. Found in the porridge bowl. A common pewter spoon, collected by Constable Hayes, handled by the stem, wrapped in paper marked C, and logged. The stomach contents were transported from Princes Street to the laboratory of Professor Alfred Swain Taylor at Guy's Hospital. Constable Hayes transported it. The distance was 2.5 miles. He travelled by foot and hackney cab, passing over Westminster Bridge. A light drizzle fell. He departed at 4 o'clock and arrived at 4:55. Professor Taylor, lecturer on medical jurisprudence, received the jar. Chemical analysis was conducted by Professor Taylor in his laboratory at Guy's Hospital. The laboratory was a 20-foot room on the ground floor, containing stone benches, glass alembics, brass scales, and shelves of reagent bottles. Analysis began at 6 o'clock on the 13th of September. He employed the Marsh Test. He treated a portion of the stomach contents with hydrochloric acid. He heated the mixture in a glass flask connected to a narrow porcelain tube. The procedure took 40 minutes. A jet of hydrogen gas was passed over heated zinc. A dark, metallic stain deposited on a cold porcelain plate held in the gas stream. The stain was soluble in chloride of lime solution, confirming arsenic. A Marsh test was performed as confirmation. Copper foil turned slate grey. He calculated 3/4 of a grain of white arsenic. The report was completed at 8:20 on the 14th. It comprised 2 pages of foolscap, written in Taylor's precise hand. 2 witness statements were taken. Witness 1, Mary Ann Gillett, age 31, housewife, questioned at Princes Street at 10:15 on the 12th. She stated she saw Sarah Drake stir the child's porridge from a blue and white jug. Her exact quote was recorded, "She poured from the jug into the bowl." When questioned, she wept. Witness 2, James Miller, age 19, assistant at Grindley's chemist, Blackfriars Road, questioned at Bow Street at 11 on the 13th. He identified Sarah Drake as a customer on the 11th. His quote, "She purchased 2 pennyworth of white arsenic for rats." He was calm. Investigation findings pointed to motive. Sarah Drake was 3 months in arrears of wages, totaling 12 shillings. She had argued with Mrs. Gillett over the debt on the 10th. John Gillett reported the argument. Arrest occurred on the 14th of September at 7 o'clock in the morning. Police Constable William Hayes, accompanied by Sergeant Thomas Green, arrested Sarah Drake in the kitchen of number 3, Princes Street. She was scrubbing the stone floor. She stood up, wiping her hands on her apron. Her response was recorded. "I am ready." She offered no resistance. Officers took from her a pair of scissors, a thimble, and 4pence halfpenny. She was taken to the Bow Street lockup. The journey was half a mile on foot, along wet cobbles, taking 12 minutes. They arrived at 7:20. The laboratory held the sharp vinegar scent of acetic acid and the dry heat of a spirit lamp. The cab wheels clattered on the wet granite sets of the Strand. Sarah Drake was held in a cell at the Bow Street lockup for 3 days. The cell measured 8 feet by 6, with walls of whitewashed brick, a stone bench, and a small barred window set high in the wall. Meals of bread and water were delivered at 8, 1, and 6 by the turnkey, a man named Hodges. She received no visitors. The magistrate's hearing commenced at 11 o'clock on the morning of the 18th of September in the Bow Street courtroom. The room was 30 feet long, with a high coffered ceiling and oak panelling. Mr. Henry Morton presided. Approximately 60 spectators crowded the public gallery. The atmosphere was stifling, lit by gas jets that hissed, smelling of damp wool and coal gas. Prosecution evidence was presented by Mr. Solicitor Clarkson. Witnesses were called in this order: Mary Ann Gillett, Dr. John Gibson, James Miller. chemist's assistant, Mary Ann Gillett, testified at 11:20. She described the morning's events in a low voice. The porridge bowl was shown to her. She identified it. Her quote, "That is the bowl." Dr. John Gibson testified at 11:40. He summarized the post-mortem findings and the symptoms of arsenical poisoning. The glass jar of stomach contents was presented. He stated, "Inflammation was acute and extensive." James Miller testified at 12:10. He produced the poison register from Grindley's chemist. His quote, "Her signature is here, S. Drake." The key exhibit was the poison register from Grindley's chemist. It was a leather-bound ledger, 9 inches by 12, with marbled end papers. It contained columns for date, name, substance, quantity, and purpose. The entry for the 11th of September read, "S. Drake, white arsenic, sued, rats." James Miller identified it. It proved the purchase. The magistrate examined the page through a magnifying glass. No defense counsel was present. Sarah Drake, when asked if she wished to question the witnesses, shook her head. The magistrate asked, "Did you purchase arsenic?" She replied, "I did, sir." At 12:35, Mr. Morton announced his decision. He stated, "I commit you, Sarah Drake, to take your trial at the next session of the Central Criminal Court on the charge of willful murder." The trial was to be held at the Old Bailey in October. Transfer to Newgate occurred that afternoon at 3 o'clock. She was transported in a prison van drawn by 2 horses, escorted by Constable Hayes and a warder named Jenkins. The route went along High Holborn and Farringdon Street, a distance of 1 mile. The weather was overcast. The journey took 20 minutes. She arrived at Newgate's lodge at 3:25. The receiving officer, Mr. Carter, recorded her name, charge, and personal effects in the prison ledger. She was taken to the female wing. Public reaction was noted in 2 forms. The Morning Chronicle of the 19th reported, "A female servant committed for poisoning." A small crowd gathered outside Bow Street, estimated at 30 persons, who watched the van depart in silence. Gaslight flared early in the shortening autumn afternoon. Sarah Drake was held in Newgate Prison's female wing, cell number 17 on the second gallery. The cell was 9 feet long, 7 wide, and 8 high. The walls were grey stone, streaked with damp. The floor was flagged, the ceiling was vaulted brick. A single window, 18 inches square, was set with iron bars and thick greenish glass, offering a view of the prison's inner wall. The door was iron-studded oak with a sliding hatch. Furnishings were a wooden plank bed, a straw-filled mattress, 2 grey blankets, a stool, and a slop bucket. Light came from a tallow lamp in the corridor, lit from 6 until 9. The cell was cold, drawing chill from the stone. Smells included carbolic, human waste, and the faint odour of boiling gruel. Sounds were the tread of the wardress's boots, the clang of distant doors, and the murmur of other prisoners. Her daily routine was fixed. Wake at 6. The slop bucket was emptied into a central channel by a prisoner trustee at 6:15. Breakfast of oatmeal, gruel, and bread was delivered at 7 through the hatch. Exercise occurred from 9 to 9:45 in a narrow paved yard, 30 yards long, supervised by wardress Elizabeth Collins. Dinner of broth and potatoes was at noon. Afternoon was spent in cell. Supper of bread and a pint of cocoa was at 5. Lights were extinguished at 9. Officials visited. The prison surgeon, Dr. Edwin Lancaster, visited on the 22nd of September. He examined her pulse and noted in his log, "Prisoner quiet, pulse regular, no complaint." No treatment was given. The chaplain, Reverend John Davis, visited twice weekly. They discussed the scripture. She asked no questions, only repeating the prayers he offered. Her defense counsel, Mr. Jeremiah Jones, appointed by the court, visited once on the 25th. They discussed the evidence. She stated she had bought the arsenic for rats. He noted her cooperation was passive. 2 humanization moments were recorded. On the 24th, she asked Wardress Collins if she might have an extra piece of cloth to mend a tear in her shift. On the morning of the 28th, Reverend Davis observed her shivering in her cell before the morning fire was lit in the corridor. October arrived with a week of persistent fog that seeped through the barred window. 5 weeks passed between committal and trial, marked by the first frost on the prison yard. The trial of Sarah Drake began on Monday the 16th of October, 1843, at 10 o'clock in Court Number 1 of the Central Criminal Court, Old Bailey. The courtroom was 45 feet long, 30 wide, with a vaulted ceiling 30 feet high. The walls were panelled in dark oak. A large arched window dominated one wall. The judge's bench was raised 5 steps. The jury box held 12 men. The prisoner's dock was a raised wooden pen in the centre. The public gallery held over 100 spectators. Gasoliers provided light. The atmosphere was warm, smelling of polish and crowded humanity. The only sounds were the rustle of paper and the shuffle of feet. Principal figures entered. Mr. Justice Coltman took his seat at 10 o'clock precisely. For the prosecution, Mr. Clarkson. For the defence, Mr. Jeremiah Jones. The prisoner, Sarah Drake, entered the dock at 10:05. She wore a grey dress and white cap. Her demeanour was described as composed, eyes downcast. A jury of 12 men, including a grocer, a carpenter, and a clerk, were sworn. The indictment was read by the Clerk of Arraigns, Mr. Phillips. The charge that she, Sarah Drake, on the 12th day of September, feloniously, wilfully, and of her malice aforethought, did kill and murder Alfred Gillett. The prisoner's plea, spoken clearly, was not guilty. Mr. Clarkson for the prosecution rose at 10:15. He promised to prove purchase, administration, and death by arsenic. He stated, "The chain of evidence is complete, from the chemist's shop to the child's stomach." 3 prosecution witnesses were called. Mary Ann Gillett was called at 10:25, aged 31, dressed in black. She testified to the events of the morning, the stirring of the porridge, the child's illness. Her quote, "He was well until he ate." Under cross-examination by Mr. Jones, she admitted she did not see powder added. Dr. John Gibson testified at 11 o'clock. He detailed the symptoms and post-mortem. The jar was produced. He stated, "The findings are characteristic of arsenical poisoning." Cross-examined, he agreed other irritants could cause inflammation, but not the metallic stain. Professor Alfred Swain Taylor was called at 11:40. He gave his credentials. Lecturer on Medical Jurisprudence, Guy's Hospital. He explained the Marsh Test, using a glass tube and a porcelain plate to demonstrate the formation of the stain. He used the term arsenical deposit. Under cross-examination, Mr. Jones asked if the test could be mistaken. Taylor responded, "It is definitive for metallic arsenic." 2 pieces of physical evidence were presented. Exhibit A, the porridge bowl, was passed to the jury at 12:10. Each juror examined the white china. Exhibit B, the poison register, was shown at 12:20. The jury studied the entry. Expert testimony was given by Professor Taylor as detailed. The defense case was brief. The prisoner did not testify. Mr. Jones called no witnesses. His strategy was to suggest accidental contamination and highlight lack of direct proof of administration. Closing arguments began at 1 o'clock. Mr. Clarkson spoke for 30 minutes. He summarized the purchase, the symptoms, the chemical proof. He said, "The poison passed from her hand to his mouth." Mr. Jones spoke for 20 minutes. He argued the evidence was circumstantial. He stated, "Where is the proof she placed it in his food?" Mr. Justice Coltman began his charge to the jury at 2 o'clock. It lasted 40 minutes. He instructed them on the burden of proof, the definition of malice aforethought, and the weight of scientific evidence. He directed them to consider if the arsenic could have entered the food by any other means. The jury retired to consider their verdict at 2:45. They were conducted to a room 12 feet square, furnished with a table and chairs. The courtroom fell to a low murmur. The prisoner sat motionless. The deliberation lasted 55 minutes. The jury returned at 3:40. They appeared solemn. The foreman, identified as Samuel Green, a haberdasher, stood. The clerk asked, "How say you, gentlemen of the jury? Do you find the prisoner at the bar guilty or not guilty of the charge of murder?" The foreman answered, "Guilty." A collective exhale passed through the court. The prisoner showed no visible reaction. Mr. Justice Coltman placed the black cap upon his head. He sentenced her, "You shall be taken from hence to the place from whence you came, and from thence to a place of lawful execution, and there you shall be hanged by the neck until you are dead." The execution was set for Monday the 13th of November. The prisoner said nothing. She was removed from the dock at 3:50, escorted by 2 wardresses, and taken below. Guilty. The gaslights had been lit during the deliberation, casting long shadows across the oak benches. Outside, a November dusk gathered early, bringing a fine, cold rain. Sarah Drake was held in the condemned cell at Newgate for 28 days. The cell was larger than her previous one, 12 by 10 feet, with a fireplace that was kept lit. A wardress, Elizabeth Carter, sat with her at all times, joined by a second at night. The chaplain, Reverend Davis, visited daily. In her final days, she ate little, bread, a little broth. She received no letters or visitors. She spent hours reading the prayer book provided. On the 10th, she asked Reverend Davis if God would forgive her. He read from the Psalms. On the night of the 12th, she slept for perhaps 2 hours, noted by the wardress as fitful. Monday the 13th of November, 1843, dawned clear and cold. She was awakened at 7 o'clock. A hard frost silvered the roofs visible from the high window. The sky was a pale, washed blue. The only sounds were the distant ringing of church bells for the 8 o'clock service. At 7:45, the officials entered. Present were the sheriff, the under-sheriff, Reverend Davis, the prison surgeon Dr. Lancaster, 2 wardresses, and the executioner William Calcraft. She wore the same grey dress. Calcraft pinioned her arms behind her back with a leather strap. She was calm and walked without assistance. Reverend Davis asked if she had any last words. She said, "God forgive me." The procession departed the cell at 7:55. They walked 40 yards along a stone-flagged corridor, through an iron gate and out into a small enclosed yard. The walk took 2 minutes. The morning air was bitingly cold. The execution site was a scaffold erected in the open yard within Newgate's walls. It was a wooden platform, 10 feet square, reached by a short flight of steps. A crossbeam supported a new hempen rope. Beneath was a trapdoor operated by a lever. Witnesses present included the sheriff, the under-sheriff, the prison surgeon, 4 newspaper reporters from the Times, Morning Chronicle, Morning Post and Lloyd's Weekly, and 12 appointed citizens. No public were admitted. Total witnesses, 23. Sarah Drake was positioned on the trapdoor. Calcraft placed a white cotton hood over her head. He adjusted the noose, the knot placed behind her left ear. Reverend Davis recited the burial service. "I am the resurrection and the life." She spoke no further words. The under-sheriff gave a signal with his hand. At 8 o'clock precisely, Calcraft pulled the lever. The trapdoor fell with a loud crack. Her body dropped 2 feet, jerked, and then swung slightly. Dr. Lancaster monitored the pulse. He pronounced her dead at 8:12. The body was left hanging for 1 hour. The prison bell tolled 8 times at the hour of execution. At 9:15, the body was cut down by Calcraft and an assistant. It was placed in a plain pine coffin that had been standing in a corner of the yard. The coffin was taken to the prison mortuary. Dr. Lancaster signed the death certificate. Cause of death, judicial hanging. She was buried within the prison walls at 4 o'clock that afternoon, in an unmarked grave, 6 feet deep. The burial was witnessed by the chaplain and the governor. The entry in the Newgate calendar read, "Drake, Sarah, executed for murder." When on the 10th of November, she had asked the wardress for a needle to secure a loose button on her dress. The trial transcript runs to 48 pages, bound in vellum, filed at the Central Criminal Court, reference Crim 10/1843. Exhibit B, the poison register, was returned to Grindley's chemist. The case is recorded in the Old Bailey proceedings, the Newgate calendar, and the Home Office criminal registers, HO 27. The conviction rested on the Marsh Test and the poison register. In the prison ledger, her occupation is listed as servant. The frost did not melt from the prison yard until past noon. The gallows timber was stored in a shed. The rope burned.